The Russia-Ukraine war just took a dramatic and unprecedented turn. NATO airspace has been breached after Russia launched a massive drone incursion not only into Ukraine, but further west into Poland. What happens next could change the tone of this conflict enormously in the days and weeks to come. The incident occurred in the early hours of Wednesday, September 10. Russia, as it so often does, launched an aerial assault on Ukraine, sending numerous waves of strike drones from various positions over the border. There's nothing new or shocking about this, since it happens so often. Indeed, only days ago, in the early hours of September 7, Russia yet again broke its previous record and launched the largest mass aerial attack on Ukraine since the war began. It sent a total of over 800 drones, decoys and missiles towards targets all across the country, resulting in the deaths of at least 4 people and damages to residential buildings and even a government building in Kyiv. But the September 10 attack was different, because some of the drones didn't stop in Kyiv or any other Ukrainian town or city. They kept going, heading further and further west, and at 1 a.m. local time, Ukrainian monitors confirmed that some of Russia's Shahed drones had officially passed over the border and into Poland, officially entering NATO airspace. The rest of the attack continued more or less as normal, with drones and missiles striking targets across Ukraine. Explosions rang out in numerous regions and cities, including the capital of Kyiv, as well as Lviv, Lutsk, Kalush and other regions. In Vinnytsia, various industrial facilities were hit, but fortunately no casualties were reported. In the Zhytomyr region, 1 person died after Russian weapons struck civilian businesses and homes. Vitaly Bunechko, governor of the region, reported the situation on Telegram. Today, during a combined air attack, the enemy struck the territory of Zhytomyr region using kamikaze drones and cruise missiles. As a result of the strikes, 1 person was killed and another was injured. Several civilian enterprises and private homes were damaged. The elimination of the consequences is ongoing. Damage was also incurred in the Cherkasy region, where air defenses brought down several drones and missiles, but blast damage was reported to local homes, power lines and livestock. But it was over the border in Poland where the most dramatic aspect of the story unfolded. As the drones began to leave Ukraine and pass into Poland, Ukrainian monitors issued warning calls across online channels, writing in Polish and urging people near the border to head to their shelters right away. Fortunately, the Polish armed forces were prepared, and Poland, in general, has been leading the way across Europe when it comes to conflict readiness and military modernization in recent times. The country has invested heavily in defenses, fortified its borders, bolstered its armed forces, and gone above and beyond with procurement and preparation, anticipating a possible conflict with Russia in the not-so-distant future. Poland has also invested heavily in its East Shield project, which involves setting up a mixture of physical barriers and mostly automated border defense systems along its eastern flank, which should make it significantly harder for any invading forces to break through the border lines. Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, sent a clear message when asked about the intentions of this project. "We'll make the Polish border secure in peacetime and impassable for the enemy in wartime. We do this to deter the enemy, so that all those who wish Poland ill, all those who plan an attack, an aggression against our allies or against our country, stay away from Poland. Poland is strong. Poland will be safe thanks to its own actions and thanks to its own allies." On top of all that, Poland has been scrambling fighter jets on a regular basis, proving that it's ready, willing and able to strike back at Russia should the Kremlin make the bold decision to attack. Given all of this, it's no surprise that the Polish armed forces were, thankfully, able to quickly detect the enemy drones. The country's alert status fighters were scrambled in an instant, air defense systems came online, and radar systems activated to guide Polish and Allied warplanes as they engaged and wiped out the Russian UAVs. Fellow NATO member, the Netherlands, reportedly helped out, involving its own F-35 fighter jets in Poland's defensive operations. Polish Armed Forces Operational Command released a statement, informing the public and the wider world of what was going on. Polish and Allied aircraft are operating in our airspace, and ground-based air defense and radar reconnaissance systems have reached the highest level of alert. Poland also took additional precautionary measures, including the temporary closure of at least 4 airports, including Warsaw, Lublin, Modlin, and Rzeszów. Warnings were also issued for the local population of several regions, including the Masovian and Lublin areas, where residents were instructed to remain indoors. As for the exact number of drones that entered Polish airspace, accounts have varied. Early accounts suggested anywhere from 8 drones to a much greater amount, with Donald Tusk initially reporting a huge number of Russian drones. Tusk later issued a clarifying statement explaining that an astonishing 19 drones were recorded entering Polish airspace, with several being shot down. Images have been released showing at least one house with severe structural damage to its roof, though no casualties have been reported among the Polish people. But that doesn't mean the story is over. Far from it, because this is an unprecedented situation. The odd Russian drone entering NATO airspace and crossing over other international borders has been seen before. In August 2024, for example, a Russian drone reportedly crossed the Polish border and remained in the airspace for around half an hour before disappearing from radar screens, with bad weather conditions preventing Poland from intercepting it at the time. A month later, in September 2024, Russian drone activity was also detected in the skies over Romania and Latvia, raising concerns among NATO allies. Other drones have also been spotted on several occasions since then in Poland and Moldova, with the latest incident occurring in August of this year, when a Russian drone crash-landed in a rural part of eastern Poland in an act that Polish officials called a provocative move on the part of the Kremlin. The Polish Defense Minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, said at the time, "Russia once again provokes NATO countries after drone incidents that took place in Romania, Lithuania and Latvia, as well as after airspace violations that occurred in almost all NATO countries." This latest attack, however, is on a whole new level. This wasn't the case of 1 or 2 drones accidentally crossing borders or crash landing in farmers' fields after veering off course from their intended targets in Ukraine. This was a whole swarm of drones deliberately passing over the Polish border and posing a real risk to the people there. Understandably, numerous Polish officials and other world leaders have quickly issued statements condemning Russia's actions. Polish President Karol Nawrocki announced an emergency security briefing with his officials, stating the security of our homeland is the highest priority. Kosiniak-Kamysz also wrote on social media that he was in constant contact with NATO command, suggesting that NATO allies were in discussions over a possible response to this attack. Tusk echoed his defense minister's word. He wrote on X, "Last night the Polish airspace was violated by a huge number of Russian drones. Those drones that posed a direct threat were shot down. I'm in constant communication with the Secretary General of NATO and our allies." Tusk also called the attack a large-scale provocation on the part of Russia, underlining the significance of this incident and its unprecedented nature. This is the first time Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO country. All our allies are taking the situation very seriously. We have not recorded any casualties. The Polish PM went on to explain an operation had commenced to find and recover the remains of the Russian drones, and Polish residents have been instructed to stay away from any fallen drones or pieces of debris. An SMS warning was sent out to the population, courtesy of Poland's Public Safety Service, Alert RCB. The message read, "Attention! Due to the operation to neutralize objects which have violated the border of the Polish Republic, inform services about drones and locations where they fall. Do not approach them." Leaders of Baltic and Nordic nations, those that are closest to Russia and theoretically most at risk of similar incidents in the future, also expressed immediate concern. The Swedish Prime Minister, Ulf Kristersson, called Russia's violations of Polish airspace unacceptable, stating, "The Russian war of aggression against Ukraine poses a threat to the security of all of Europe. Poland has every right to defend its airspace. We give our full support to Poland as a NATO ally and EU member. Sweden and Poland stand united in our support for Ukraine." Latvia's President, Edgars Rinkēvičs, wrote on X, "Full support and solidarity with our Polish friends and allies over the incursion of Russian drones in Poland. Clear testimony that Russian aggression in Ukraine affects us directly and appropriate measures must be taken. Allies are and should be working together." Foreign Minister of Norway, Espen Barth Eide, also took to social media, posting, "The overnight violations of Polish airspace are deeply concerning and entirely unacceptable. I welcome the close coordination between Polish authorities and NATO. Norway reaffirms its steadfast support for our ally Poland and our shared commitment to European security." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wrote a lengthy tweet detailing the drone and missile strikes on his own country, while also highlighting the incursion into Poland, warning that it sets an extremely dangerous precedent. Moscow always pushes the boundary of what's possible, and if it does not encounter a strong reaction, it remains at the new level of escalation. Today, there was another step of escalation. Russian-Iranian Shaheeds operated in the airspace of Poland in NATO airspace. It was not just one Shahed that could be called an accident, but at least 8 strike drones aimed toward Poland. An extremely dangerous precedent for Europe. Whether there'll be further steps depends entirely on the coordination and the strength of the response. The Russians must feel the consequences. Russia must feel that the war cannot be expanded and will have to be ended. Over in the US, multiple American officials on both sides of the political divide were quick to speak out against Russia's bold new level of aggression. Republican Congressman Joe Wilson, a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, wrote on social media, "Russia is attacking NATO ally Poland with Iranian Shahed drones less than a week after President Trump hosted President Nawrocki at the White House. This is an act of war, and we're grateful to NATO allies for their swift response." Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of the Senate Judiciary Committee also issued a warning, stating that Vladimir Putin is testing our resolve to protect Poland and the Baltic nations, and adding, "These incursions cannot be ignored." Regarding how and why this happened, there are a couple of theories. Those who are feeling more lenient towards Russia may wish to argue that this was a mistake. Indeed, that's already the line that Belarus, one of Russia's only allies, is taking. The country's Deputy Defense Minister, Pavel Murawiecka, claimed that the drones lost their way and accidentally entered Polish airspace after their navigation systems were jammed, presumably by Ukraine's electronic warfare systems. The Deputy Minister even stated that Belarus also saw some drones enter its airspace and shot some of them down. Given Belarus's close ties with Moscow, its statements are always to be taken with a very large grain of salt. However, the fact that the country is already coming out with excuses for Russia suggests that the Kremlin too may make the claim that its drones in Poland simply veered off course accidentally and that there was no malicious intention behind the incident. As of right now, there's been no outright denial from Moscow, but instead an offer to discuss the matter with Warsaw. According to the BBC, the Kremlin initially said it would be a matter for the Russian Defense Ministry to comment on what happened in Poland. Later, Russia's military issued a statement saying that last night it carried out a mass strike on military industrial targets in western Ukraine, including with attack drones. It went on to insist that there had been no plans to target facilities on the territory of Poland. The statement added, "The maximum range of the Russian drones that allegedly crossed into Poland does not exceed 700 kilometers. Nevertheless, we're ready to hold consultations with the Polish Defense Ministry on the subject." As the BBC's Steve Rosenberg notes, no plans to isn't quite the same as didn't, so no outright denial from Moscow. Russian state TV has also started to spread claims that the attack was some sort of false flag strike orchestrated by Ukraine. Either way, the accident explanation doesn't make much sense. It's reasonable to suggest that one drone here and there might accidentally lose communications with its operator and end up in the wrong place due to interference by electronic warfare systems. This may be what has happened in the past, when certain Russian Shaheeds have ended up in places like Latvia or Poland. But the idea of a whole group of drones accidentally entering Poland is far less realistic, as confirmed by numerous officials like Jim Townsend, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, who told the BBC, "One drone is a mistake, multiple drones is not a mistake. We've got to have more time for Poland to figure out what they're finding and see what their views are. But this is more than likely a test. This is a test that NATO has to answer." The idea of this being an intentional move to test NATO's resolve and responsiveness is a much more likely explanation, and it's one that numerous officials, from Tusk to Zelensky, have already spoken about in their respective statements. It appears that yet again the Kremlin is attempting to push the boundaries, to taunt and provoke NATO, to see what they can get away with. Indeed, many officials think that this is just the latest step in a long-running series of provocations from Russia. Some believe that the previous drone activities in locations like Poland and Latvia were all part of this plan, all designed to help the Kremlin learn about how NATO would react and see how strong and unified the alliance truly is. Others are fearful that this latest incident signifies growing boldness in Russia's leadership, particularly its president Vladimir Putin, who just days ago appeared alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at a military parade in Beijing, in a clear demonstration of unity between their respective nations. Perhaps Putin has gained confidence after his talks with fellow national leaders and now feels ready to put the next step of his plans into action, expanding his military operations beyond Ukraine and quite possibly preparing a more serious assault on a NATO nation. This is something that many world leaders have been worried about for quite some time. Earlier this year, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte warned that a Russian war on NATO could come at any point in the next 5 years.
In terms of ammunition, Russia produces in 3 months what the whole of NATO produces in a year. And its defense industrial base is expected to roll out 1,500 tanks, 3,000 armored vehicles and 200 Iskander missiles this year alone. Russia could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years. 5 years. Let's not kid ourselves. We are all on the eastern flank now. The new generation of Russian missiles travel at many times the speed of sound. The distance between European capitals is only a matter of minutes. There is no longer east or west. There is just NATO.
Zelensky has also suggested that Russia could strike NATO in the coming years, and this all comes at a time when Russia and Belarus are both gearing up for their biggest annual military exercise, Zapad 2025, which is set to take place in Belarus from September 12 to 16. This exercise will reportedly involve around 13,000 personnel, and representatives from numerous other nations will participate, which may include Bangladesh, North Korea, Pakistan, China, Iran, India, and others. EU analysts have sounded the alarm that Zapad 2025 could be used by the Kremlin to apply pressure along NATO's eastern flank or even provide cover for some sort of conflict escalation, with Donald Tusk recently announcing that Poland will officially close its border with Belarus at midnight of September 11 due to national security concerns. Now, Tusk has far greater concerns. In his recent remarks to Parliament after the drone attack, he said, "There is no doubt that this provocation is incomparably more dangerous from Poland's point of view than the previous ones." He went on to say that Poland is moving towards invoking Article 4 of the NATO Treaty, which allows member nations to raise important issues to the North Atlantic Council, which is the main decision-making body of the alliance. If that moves ahead, discussions will take place at the Council to determine whether or not the territorial integrity and security of Poland has been threatened. Tusk says he expects to receive NATO's support, stating, "This is not just a war for Ukrainians, this is a confrontation that Russia has declared against the entire free world." In short, the coming days are set to be incredibly tense, particularly for the people of Poland, who have not only had to witness Russian drones in their skies, but now have to deal with thousands of Russian and Belarusian troops, among other armed forces, carrying out dangerous exercises just beyond the border. NATO leaders, meanwhile, are set to enter deep discussions about what this incident means and how they should respond. A stern response may be the only answer at this stage, or else Russia may decide to push NATO's limits even further next time around. Now, learn more about the Russia-Ukraine conflict in our recent video, breaking down exactly how and why Russia is losing the war as it stands. Or watch this video to see how Ukraine pulled off a stunning display of defensive prowess over the course of a single night. And finally, make sure you subscribe to our trusted channel too, so you can stay informed and up to date on everything that happens in Russia, Ukraine, and elsewhere as the conflict evolves.